This pandemic has been hard on our public schools too, trying to string together enough healthy staff members to get our kids to school and give them a solid public education amidst the chaos that keeps coming. I hoped we would come together in the 2022 session with grateful hearts for our teachers, healthcare workers, and each other, knowing Iowans need love and support now more than ever after facing an isolating, scary pandemic that has taxed us to our core. But instead, the President of the Senate chose to use his opening day speech to pour lighter fluid on a culture war that Iowans don't want to be a part of. Iowans are salt of the earth people who care about giving our kids a strong public education. It's what Iowa is known for. We know strong public schools build strong communities and our future workforce. This bill isn't about protecting our kids. This bill isn't about improving public schools. This bill is an attack on our kids and Iowans by threatening to put our beloved public school teachers and librarians in prison. This bill is part of an orchestrated attack on Iowa's public education system. As a parent and a lifelong Iowan, I am very concerned with the extremist narrative and agenda Republicans are pushing this year, going after public school teachers and librarians, threatening to put them in jail, going after our kids' safety with cameras for classrooms for who knows who to watch our kids, going after parents who lost their jobs with bills to gut unemployment insurance, which will hurt Iowa children and communities, going after public education budgets to fund corporate tax cuts. There is an easy way for Senate Republicans to stop this extremist agenda, but apparently they think Iowans like this culture war stuff of villainizing teachers and librarians with threats to put them in prison. I'm not sure what kind of world we're living in. I cannot imagine what it's like for Iowa teachers to get up every morning to go to work when you see Republicans at the State House attacking their profession with this toxic extremist narrative. This bill will do nothing positive to help keep teachers teaching in Iowa, and that makes me angry. Our kids deserve better. Iowans deserve better. To the students and teachers watching this morning, watching our subcommittee, thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say as you testify on this bill, and I encourage anyone who doesn't get a chance to speak today to please go online, make your voices heard. Hopefully someone will put in the Zoom a link where you can submit your testimony. I know we have a process in our schools that work. Let's leave this up to local decision makers to give local answers on what we need in our schools. Thank you.
Okay, so for the people that are online that maybe just joined just recently, there is a reactions button at the bottom. I'd ask that you put your wave the indication so I'll know to call on you. I am not going to limit the time of this committee at this time. I mean, we'd like to get under an hour. Would I be happy to go up to an hour on this? With that said,
I have a 10:30 sub, so maybe you could go one other.
Okay, so then Senator Schultz, do you have any opening comments?
I'm disappointed we opened the committee with what I think was actual ideological, prepared, scripted, pouring gas on the fire, and that's unfortunate. I'm more interested in getting to the parents' input. They're the customers, the taxpayers, the parents of the children, and I'm looking forward to hearing what they're doing to try to protect their children through the system and whether they're being hurt or not.
So what I'm going to do is I want to ask the person, which I've done with before in different subcommittees, the person that has filed this bill, our President, Senator Chapman, who I've worked with on this bill. I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about what's in this bill.
Well, thank you, Chairman Zaun. Thank you, Senator Schultz and Senator Petersen for holding this subcommittee. Senator Zaun, you really appreciate your willingness to work to protect children. What we're talking about is pornography in schools. Senator Petersen, I have to say I'm so disappointed by those comments. I've worked with you. I worked with you last year to lift the statute of limitations on sexual assault of minors. We had bipartisan support there. I've worked with you on numerous issues when it comes to sexual assault. In fact, in 2019, you, along with everyone else, voted to remove the exemption of parents showing kids pornography. The exact same code section, 728, 2019, Senate File 460. Every single member, every colleague voted to say it's not okay for parents to give pornography to their children. We removed that exemption. But yet here today, you say it's okay for teachers
Don't
to
put
give
words in
porn.
my mouth.
The point,
That's-
just, let's.
Do not put
I
words
want
in
to
my
call,
mouth.
I'm
That
going to
is-
call this meeting to order. Let's let him finish, and I'm going to
Okay,
give you an
but I'm not going
opportunity.
to allow to have him
Okay,
say that I believe in that.
I
That's
am gonna make-
ridiculous.
okay, I'm going to make excuse me.
I'll
I'm the
step
chair of
back
this
from that.
committee. I'm not going to tolerate people being interrupted. You will get an opportunity to speak after he gets done as well.
You
So
cannot attack somebody
Anyway,
personally.
Your point is well taken.
Thank
I will retract that. What I will say is what we're talking about today, since we have the media here, and I dare KCCI to show these images. This is pornography in our schools. This is sexually explicit material of oral sex, And to hear individuals advocate, promote, and distribute this material to children as a parent of 5 children in public schools, and let me just say for the record, we do have wonderful teachers in this state. We have fantastic teachers. That's why my kids go to public education. But that does not negate those teachers that have advocated and distributed this type of material. And it's disheartening when I get emails from teachers who are so fearful of speaking up. They ask their names not be said out loud, but they're just as disgusted with what's happening. This is not okay. Reading books in graphic detail about rape, incest, and pedophilia is not okay. The last thing I should have to worry about sending my daughter or my sons to school is that they're going to be exposed to pornography in school. I want my children to go get an education, to learn about math and science, engineering. This is the last thing. And let that sink in, folks. The fact that we're even having this conversation should terrify all of us, that we're literally talking about pornography in schools. And so, again, thank you. This bill, Mr. Chairman, what this bill will do is allow parents an opportunity to seek redress. We have these review committees set up by the boards reviewing these books. And in this case, at least one school district, they reviewed it and kept it. Another school district, they removed it, this book. We are talking about pornography. We are talking about pornography in schools. And the fact that we just a few years ago passed a bill to say parents can't even show their children pornography, but it's okay in schools. I don't understand that rationale at all. I don't get it. In fact, we have that bill filed by a Democrat senator to do virtually the same thing when it comes to a sex offender who's a parent. It's the same bill, same amendment will be filed, and we'll vote again. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for taking this issue up. I really want to hear, I know we've got a lot of individuals here that I want to hear from as well, but this is worthy of a conversation. Thank you.
So whoever would like to testify in front of the committee, just identify yourself, tell us if you're for or against. And I'd like to just get people lined up and sit in this chair if that's okay. So people at home could hear what you're saying. So yeah, go right ahead. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Melissa Petersen with the Iowa State Education Association, and we are registered in firm opposition to this bill. I do appreciate hearing directly from the bill sponsor this morning, but I have to say this piece of legislation appears to be a solution in search of a problem. We already have a very clear definitions of what constitutes obscene materials. We already have severe penalties for education professionals and employees should they happen to violate that existing standard. We also already have clear mechanisms within our public school district for parents and guardians should they find any materials objection. There is a mechanism for which a parent can opt a student out. There is a mechanism where someone can take their concerns for request for reconsideration or removal, for example, to their existing and locally elected school board. I think it's also important for folks to understand that these are existing definitions, for example, of obscene material that everyone understands at the level playing field. This is what is recognized both by our licensing agency and also by our court system. Obscene material is not being provided to our children in our public school districts. I appreciate there seem to be conflicting definitions of what constitutes obscene material. At the end of the day, if someone is concerned, there are already mechanisms in place to address these challenges. Nothing is more important to our education professionals than providing a safe, healthy, inclusive, and equitable opportunity for a quality public education. What I find terribly challenging about this conversation is the presumption that there are not mechanisms in place to deal with these situations. The presumption that there are public education professionals that are looking to harm children deliberately. That is not happening in our school districts. We find it terribly offensive. And I think it's important for us to recognize, in the context of a severe worker shortage, in the context of two of the most challenging years our public education system have seen in my lifetime, we seem to be going out of our way to threaten education professionals. In fact, this bill threatens them with jail, threatens them with financial fines and penalties. We have real, actual problems here in the state of Iowa, and this is distractionary, quite frankly, from the real problems that we do have in this state. So I would really implore this body to stop suggesting that teachers are the enemy of parents and suggesting that they aren't doing their jobs to the best of their ability, because they are. Even if we're just throwing out pieces of legislation to generate a conversation, please think about the education professionals, the more than 50,000 education professionals across this state that educate more than 92% of our children in this state, and who work their hardest on a daily basis to do that to the best of their ability before we file pieces of legislation such as this, or suggest folks have sinister ulterior motives to the quality services they're providing to our kids. Please do not advance this bill forward. Thank you.
Senator Schultz, I know you have a question.
Ma'am, I have a question, if you would. Has the Teachers Association, my understanding is this is in schools currently, which would belie your statement that it's not in schools now. Did the Teachers Association identify this as obscene and try to remove it to protect children before the legislation?
So we have more than 400 locals across the entire state. They work with individual school districts and their boards to identify what materials are appropriate. I will say the book that I believe Senator Chapman has brought an example of was removed from the shelves of the Waukee Library with the support of the Waukee Education Association. I would, however, if I may, just go back to the fact that I do think there are different understandings and interpretations of what constitutes obscene materials. At the end of the day, local boards, with the cooperation of our local associations, make those determinations with the mechanisms in place if something is deemed to be objectionable.
Is there a position statewide on whether that's obscene or not?
It is left up to education associations. I am not familiar with that particular documentation. That's why we have local school boards in our. Okay. Thank you.
The floor is yours. Please sit down.
Hello, my name is Pam Perono, and I am a parent with 3 kids in the Urbandale Community School District. I wanted to speak today I am in favor of this bill. I wanted to speak today as to why I believe legislation is needed on this topic. I personally know of 10 different communities in central Iowa who have filed reconsideration requests with their school districts on books containing obscene materials, and only one book in one school was removed. And I would be happy to talk to you about Urbandale's process at a later time. These books contain things such as pedophilia, rape, incest, and are often in a way to arouse. These books are found in schools all over the state of Iowa. A group of us researched 6 different books containing obscene material in 70 different school districts, and 60 out of those 70 schools had at least 3 of those books. One of the books researched was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, and I would like to read you a paragraph from it if I could. The tenderness swelled up in him, and he sank to his knees, his eyes on the foot of his daughter. Crawling on all fours toward her, he raised his hand and caught the foot in an upward stroke. Piccola lost her balance and was about to careen to the floor. Choli raised his other hand to her hips to save her from falling. He put his head down and nibbled at the back of her leg. His mouth trembled at the firm sweetness of the flesh. He closed his eyes, letting his fingers dig into her waist. The rigidness of her shocked body, the silence of her stunned throat, was better than Pauline's easy laughter had been. The confused mixture of his memories of Pauline and the doing of a wild and forbidden thing excited him, and a bolt of desire ran down his genitals, giving it length and softening the lips of his anus. Surrounding all of this lust was a border of politeness. He wanted to F her tenderly, but the tenderness would not hold. The tightness of her vagina was more than he could bear. His soul seemed to slip down to his guts and fly out of her, and the gigantic thrust he made into her then provoked the only sound she made, a hollow suck of air in the back of her throat. This particular book was found in 33 of the schools that I researched, and a lot of these were smaller schools. Some of them are combined middle school / high schools. So we are talking, this book is available to kids as young as 6th graders. I don't understand how these kind of materials can be made available to our kids in our schools. Our schools are supposed to be mandatory reporters. It is supposed to be a safe place for our children. Our schools have shown that they will not act on this issue alone. So that's why we need our legislators too. Administrators should be held accountable if they're going to allow obscene material to our children in our schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Otherwise, you can see.
Hi, my name is Samantha Fett, and I'm from the Carlisle School District. I recently ran for re-election campaign in Carlisle and lost, unfortunately, which is okay. But part of the campaign was a discussion around gender queer, which is a page of the book that Senator Chapman presented. When we found that book in our school, in our high school library, it seemed like it would be open and check case. Like, oops, we accidentally let this book through. We'll get it taken care of. But instead, we were faced with vilification that we were transphobic, trying to shut down some sort of agenda that, in my opinion, supports pornography. So it was an uphill battle. So what we did was we followed the school board policy that is a reconsideration process. And it's a very lengthy process. We fill out these forms and a committee is developed. Unfortunately, the committee was secret. So we're not sure if it was biased or not, or fair. But we did fill out an FOI request and had not heard back from that. Once the committee came up with their decision, they decided that there was value in the book Gender Queer, and having one in the shelves was going to stay. So a group of us did go and appeal to the school board and presented our information. I did try to go to Office Max and blow up the posters of the pornographic materials, but unfortunately Office Max said that they can't reprint explicit material. So I had to print it on my home. So I brought it to the school board meeting and handed it out for the school board members to look at while they made their decision. We brought in counselors that talked about grooming and how this can perpetuate sexual abuse, and how we keep those students safe. That was ignored, and they voted 3-2 to keep it. After that meeting, we were the people that spoke out. I brought my daughter. A couple of friends brought their children as well, so they could see the arguments in favor of this book. After the meeting, those children were vilified in the school by their peers for standing up against pornography. So I'm here because I need you guys to hear this story, that we are fighting back at a level, at the local level, and we're losing. So we need help because we cannot continue to have pornography in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Gilbert. Brother to Senators Janet District. I'm very much in support of this bill. It's interesting to hear some people say that this needs to be handled at the local level. It's exactly what I did. When my daughter was given material to read, which later found out was used in various classes for 10th grade as teacher-selected material, that these girls were having conversations at lunch how uncomfortable they felt with the material because it described masturbation at length It went on to describe how boys get erections, they even get erections for their teacher, and they're proud when they hug their teacher that they can feel their erection. It talks about this boy being depressed so much that he can no longer jerk off. The girls felt very uncomfortable. They talked about this at lunch. They couldn't believe a teacher would select this for them to read. So I notified the teacher and asked, why are you asking our students to read this? I really thought that I would go to this meeting and find out, oh, we made a mistake. I've met opposition every bit of the way through the local level, from speaking with the teacher and the principal on how this is to address diversity. I don't know what any of this has to do with diversity. This is not an attack on teachers, diversity, or the LGBTQ community. It is an attack on our children's innocence. Nowhere should our children be forced to read this stuff. And I'm just curious, what happened to the Me Too movement? Why are we no longer listening to our daughters? Why does the school seem to not care when they say that the norms in society, in their music, on their social media pages, are over-sexualizing them and objectifying them? We grew up with junk food, vending machines in our schools. Our books then weren't labeled coming of age or young adult, which we know young adult means over 18. These books are being written and their intended audience is for adults. I'm not for banning books. It's all about regulating what should be appropriate for our kids to receive, especially at school. So yeah, when I grew up, we had junk food vending machines. I could go get Coke, I could get Mountain Dew. Those are no longer in our schools because we know that that's unhealthy. The school should not promote junk food to our kids because it's detrimental to their health. However, we've shifted. We can have water and Powerades in our vending machines, but the books now can talk about what's labeled as obscene, sexually explicit content. We are not talking about books like Gone with the Wind or Harry Potter or Mice and Men, Catch-22, all these books that we're talking about. We're talking about books that talk about, as I said, getting an erection. Your teacher can feel that. I love these two books here that are found in 59 of the schools. So more than half, obviously, where it describes how this girl, they're about to have sex. She's saying, wait, but he clamps his hand over her mouth and drove harder and harder until she felt him come, steaming, sticky and hot, pulled on the carpet beneath her. This is a book that's been used and challenged in Dubuque, Iowa, and it also was selected for their students to read. And it's talking about a boy who witnesses a girl as her head's getting pushed down. She starts to kiss his penis, but she's crying. She stopped crying because his penis is in her mouth. I don't think you can cry in that position. I had to stop watching at that point because I started to feel sick. They kept doing other things and she kept saying no. We have educators that want to remove Dr. Seuss from our schools because that's inappropriate. But scenes of a young boy having his penis touched by an adult, this is not obscene. Where did we lose common sense? Oral sex. And okay, so people don't like that if it's attack on the LGBTQ. Okay, I'll go move on to the heterosex. This guy here masturbates. That's his ejaculate on a piece of paper. This is found in 13 schools. He feels so guilty because we have to watch him wad up. This is him having sex with a girl. Not appropriate. Pictures of a girl naked, his genitals. Why? What educational value is in that? These graphic novels are junk food for our kids' brains. Do you know that there's also a graphic novel for Handmaid's Tale? Is this what we get to look for next? It's blacked out because it's inappropriate. This is what we're going to start seeing in our schools. And we go on further with these other books. A stepfather rapes his stepdaughter, explicit scene of him making her perform masturbation. That he tries to get her brother to rape her, and it's given in detail on that. To go further on this other one, where the father has sex with his daughter, and they try to make it in the perspective to sympathize with a pedophile, his intentions therefore gradually settle on those humans whose bodies were least offensive, children. He further limited his interest to little girls. His sexuality was anything but lewd. His patronage of little girls smacked of innocence and was associated in his mind with cleanliness. He was what one might call a very clean old man. Why do we need to hear that experience? If a guardian wants to expose their children to experiences of incest, rape, masturbation, pedophilia, then take them to the public library under parent supervision. We have filters at our school to keep kids from their iPads or their Chromebooks to be able to access internet and access pornographic material. They leave the school, that is up to the parents to take care of that. Same with these books. Create a safe space for our daughters, for our sons who don't want to grow up and become these sick people. That's all this is. To show in graphic detail like this, to disrespect women. Where are all the feminists in this? We know that this is becoming a mental health crisis. Why are we keeping this junk for their brains accessible to them at their schools? We know that there's research that shows the detrimental effects of being exposed to porn, especially at a young age. Recent data shows an increase in girls experiencing depression and thoughts of suicide. Why? I don't understand this. This is an attack on teachers. It's not an attack on diversity. It's not an attack on LGBTQ. It's an attack on our children. We try to handle it at the local level. We get pushed back at every step of the way. 5 weeks after speaking, first bringing up the issue with this book and told I'd be offered a different book, 5 weeks, zero communication from the teacher. I withdrew my child from that school. We need your help. Thank you for your support.
Next person, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi there, Kelly Myers with the Iowa County Attorneys Association. We're currently declared against the bill, but not for the underlying issue of obscenity or staying out of that issue. Our concern is on page 2, paragraphs 5 and 6, dealing with prosecutorial immunity. We have problems with any sort of weakening or undermining prosecutorial immunity. It's so important that prosecutors keep this discretion to be able to assess the evidence in a case. That has been the position of the County Attorneys Association for as long as I've represented them. And so hopefully we can work with you all on some sort of amendment to address that issue relative to paragraphs 5 and 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Audrey Bristow. I live in Johnson and I'm a junior at Johnson High School, and I'm strongly in favor of this bill. Today I'm here to tell you just a little bit about why. First, I'm going to read you an excerpt from a book that was required reading for many of my peers. This is from the Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, and the excerpt is as follows. And I really like women and their curvier curves. I spend hours in the bathroom with a magazine that has 1,000 pictures of naked movie stars. Naked women plus right hand equals happy, happy, joy, joy. Yep, that's right. I admit that I masturbate. I'm proud of it. I'm good at it. I'm ambidextrous. If there were a professional masturbators league, I'd get drafted #1 and make millions of dollars. And maybe you're thinking, well, you really shouldn't be talking about masturbation in public. Well, tough. I'm going to talk about it because everybody does it and everybody likes it. And if God hadn't wanted us to masturbate, then God wouldn't have given us thumbs. So I thank God for my thumbs. My own principal, Brian Woods, was asked to read this exact same excerpt aloud and refused. My principal would not read this aloud to a room full of adults, and I, a 16-year-old girl, have done it twice now. Once for my school board and now once for you. If this excerpt makes a middle-aged man too uncomfortable to read in front of a room of adults, how do you think teenage girls feel? We cannot choose to simply not read it like my principal did. It was required. Now to connect this to why I am particular at here. On November 15th, I was sitting next to a boy in my second period AP US history class when I watched him stick his hand down his pants during instructional time. He was at the desk 1 foot away from me. I looked away. I wasn't going to watch whatever was happening next to me. I was trying to learn about international affairs in the mid-1900s. So I looked to the front of the room, and after about 5 minutes, when I thought it was safe, I looked back to where my teacher was standing, and I watched the same boy take his hand out of his pants, start licking his fingers, and wiping his hand on the desk. 1 foot away from me. My mom always tells me you get what you accept. I believe this is going one step further. You will get what you advertise, you will get what you advocate, and you will get what you teach. My school has shown that we should be okay with what happened to me in class, that it doesn't matter. In their eyes, we don't listen anyway, so what's the harm in what they're teaching? The hard truth is, we do listen. We do pay attention. And what they don't realize is what you teach one student, every student now knows. What they tried to teach me is that my voice doesn't matter. And now everyone in my schools knows what happened to me and knows our school does not care. But why should we be surprised if they don't care when this is what they teach?
It's hard to follow that. I just feel bad for,
Just for the record, identify yourself.
Chuck Hurley, family leader, and strong support of the bill. I just feel bad for any student that has to put up with that. The lady before mentioned junk food. According to research, what these kids are being exposed to is way worse than junk food. I'd just like to read a few results from studies on the impact of pornography on children. This is compiled by the National Center on Sexual Exploitation and is available for anybody to review and look at the studies themselves. I'm going to have to summarize. Mainstream pornography eroticizes sexual violence. That alone should be enough to pass this bill. It also eroticizes incest and child sexual abuse. This is incompatible with any societal value that should be held in this building or this state. Adults who seek to sexually harm children use adult pornography to groom children into believing that sex with adults is normal. Pornography use negatively impacts brain structure and neurological function and has been linked to verbal memory impairment, decreased academic performance, lack of impulse control, and mental health problems. Children's exposure to pornography puts them at risk of addictive behaviors and negative impacts on their neurological development. Research demonstrates that children are more susceptible than adults to addictions. Internet pornography use is linked to increases in problematic sexual activity at younger ages and a greater likelihood of engaging in risky sexual behavior, such as hookups, multiple partners, I won't say the next few words, and use of substances, illegal substances during sex as young adolescents. Pornography plays a role in child-on-child harmful sexual behavior, which is a rising crisis in the U.S. An analysis of disclosures from children being treated for abuse, 950 kids aged 3 to 18, primarily being treated for sexual abuse, revealed that those who disclosed exposure to pornography were 3.3 times greater, were at 3.3 times greater likelihood of engaging in problematic sexual behavior compared to those who did not disclose pornography exposure. This goes on for page after page. I've just got one thing to say to Senator Petersen and anybody else who's concerned about teachers being threatened. Our laws against rape and murder don't apply to 99% of our society. But for the 1% who are doing bad things, we have those laws. That's what this law is for. It's only for the people who are willing to do these things to young people. This is not a threat to any teacher who's willing to be reasonable. None. They have nothing to worry about. But those who would do this to children should have something to worry about. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators. My name is Keenan Crow. I'm with One Iowa. I'd like to read you a story as well from a book that I know is in many school libraries, and we'll see if you agree that it should be kept on those library shelves. The man and his 2 daughters left town and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in town. He and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. One day, the older daughter said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man around here to give us children, as is custom all over the earth. Let us get our father to drink wine and then sleep with him and preserve our family line through our father." That night, they got their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went in and slept with him. He was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. The next day, the older daughter said to the younger, "Last night I slept with my father. Let's get him to drink wine again tonight. And you can go in and sleep with him so we can preserve our family line through our father." So he got their father to drink wine that night also, and the younger daughter went in and slept with them. Again, he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. So both of the man's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son, and she named him Moab. He is now the father of the Moabites of today. The younger daughter also had a son, and she named him Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites of today. So, of course, it's the story of Lot in Genesis 19. It contains rape, it contains incest, it contains many other difficult subjects. But I think the Bible belongs on school shelves because I don't think that just because this story is in the Bible, that the Bible is about rape, incest, or any of those other things. That's why we have the test to take the work as a whole and examine it for literary, scientific, or other kinds of value. So I don't believe that there is pornography in our schools today, and therefore I don't believe that we need to crack down on the pornography that is not in our schools. So we are currently registered against, and we'll maintain that decision. Thank you.
Good morning. I had to look and see if it was morning or afternoon because I wasn't quite sure. So I'm Connie Ryan, and I'm the Executive Director of Interfaith Alliance of Iowa and Action Fund, and we represent thousands of Iowans who are people of faith and no faith, taxpayers, parents, grandparents, business owners, neighbors, friends, and we are strongly opposed to this legislation. Iowa law already prohibits showing or distributing obscene materials to minors. We've already heard that time and again this morning. That is true. Iowa law already prohibits this action. This bill does nothing to keep our children healthy and safe. And picking and choosing, as my colleague Keenan said, picking and choosing sections and paragraphs out of any book is misleading, whether intentional or not. What this bill is about is targeting teachers and administrators and promoting the propaganda that teachers are to be feared and are the enemy of parents. This could not be further from the truth. Senate File 2198 is outrageous. It is offensive. It is designed to score political points at the expense of teachers and administrators who are dedicated to the education of all children. Can we stop the attacks on public school teachers, administrators, staff, and school board? Can we stop the extremism? Can we get back to the work of the people for the benefit of all families and Iowans? I urge you to reject this legislation. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Keeter, and I'm with Valor, Iowa, and Concerned Women for America of Iowa, and we're in support of legislation. Before I get to my comments, I want to thank the mothers and the young woman from Johnston who came to speak today. That takes a lot of courage, and I appreciate their efforts to protect Iowa children. This legislation is common sense. Schools should not be housing pornographic and obscene material for children to access. I'm going to assume most people in this room heard Governor Reynolds' interview where she read a section from the book titled All Boys Aren't Blue, found in school libraries in Iowa. Good for Governor Reynolds for revealing what our children are being exposed to. No child should be exposed to graphic sexual content, especially content that is normalizing pedophilia as this book is attempting to do. Schools are there for learning reading, writing, science, math, not distorting their innocence with sexual perversion. In society, we do not allow children into strip clubs, adult stores, or even R-rated movies without a parent. Yet children can access this type of material in their school. Now, I'm not saying that every school in Iowa or every teacher in Iowa is guilty of this. We have great schools in Iowa and we have great teachers in Iowa. But I would agree with Senator Chapman's comments on the first day of session regarding this material. Material, which I will point out, was flagged by Google because it contained adult sexual content, and Facebook pulled the images down from some of these books because it violated their community standards. I would say that Google and Facebook are not far right-leaning groups. It is time to take a stand to protect our children from these sexually obscene material. As a brief personal note, when I was 5 years old, I was in a public library with my family. Now, this bill is not addressing public libraries, but give me a moment. While in the children's section, I grabbed a little white book and handed it to my mother, and she was instantly alarmed for the book I unknowingly grabbed was a book titled The Child's First Book of Sex, and it taught kids to masturbate using bowls of swing sets. I appreciate my mother's efforts to protect me and my community by helping remove those books from the children's section. I bring this story up because the words of my mother well over 20 years ago still ring true today with this bill. Quote, knowledge is a wonderful thing, but wisdom is needed to discern on what is appropriate to learn. Our children are not wise enough at this time to discern what is good. And unless we have parents and teachers and administrators that put the moral well-being of our children first, we are flooding our children with perversion. End quote. This bill is not about banning books or censorship. It is about standards.
community standards for a children's library that say, no, you're not going to expose Iowa children to adult graphic sexual content in words and pictures. Thank you to Senator Chapman for this bill, and I would urge a yes vote in protecting the children of Iowa. Thank you.
Okay, so now I think we're done with, oh, wait, go ahead. Okay,
My name is Paul Dykstra. I came here this morning on behalf of Valor, but I'm not going to speak on her behalf. I'm going to speak on my behalf as a grandfather. I think it was a few years back that the Iowa House and Senate passed a bill to put the Pledge of Allegiance back in the schools. And as I was at caucus, I talked to one of the teachers. They said they say it every morning at school, all in unison. Now I'm thinking through that as I'm standing here listening to the conversations this morning. I think it says one nation under God. It would seem very hypocritical that we would say that at the beginning of the day and then go to the library and look at pornographic material. You got to ask yourselves, is this what God wants in our libraries? There's a day coming when we're going to stand in judgment. There's a question going to be asked. What did you do to further my kingdom? This bill should remove any pornography from the school. And that's what it does. And it puts penalties in place if it doesn't. I have a brother and sister that are teachers, were teachers, they're retired. And they've seen the erosion within the school system of what's being taught and how it's being taught. We've got to take that back. We've got to remove this from the libraries. If someone needs discipline, they have to be disciplined to get it out. So I applaud your efforts this morning. I'm very much in favor of this bill. Thank you.
okay, Emily, you are up next, and then we're going to transition into our people that are watching on Zoom.
Thank you, Senator. Emily Piper, representing the Iowa Association of School Boards. I wanted to point out that every school board in the state does adopt policy that allows for review of any instructional material as well as reconsideration and removal of any book. And every school district has a process and a policy to do that. It's unfortunate that in some cases folks feel that that process has not worked effectively. And that's something that certainly we can do a better job of educating our locally elected board members on how to do that. When that process is implemented because of a request from a parent or a community member, most of the districts have either an internal committee within the school or they have one like Johnston did, which included community members as well. They're given very specific direction in terms of how to review the material and how to take a look at it under the current definition of obscene material, which takes it in its whole, not just one portion. And so we feel like that process works, and we're very concerned about putting our employees, our district administrators, our teacher librarians, our teachers in a position where they're going to have to make a judgment call. I will tell you that when schools purchase library books, they're not purchasing them individually. They come in large quantities. The vendors are working based on recommendations from the American Library Association as to what is considered appropriate. There need to obviously be some changes coming from that. And I think as we go through this process, you'll see a more cautious and careful review and asking some questions about material that is in the school library. But I don't know that our school boards are not knowingly, willingly trying to inflict pornographic material on our students. We are trying to do the job to provide quality education. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, the first person up is Courtney Collier, I believe. The floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Courtney Collier. I'm a parent in Waukee School District. I'd like to first say to Senator Petersen and anyone who agrees with her, this bill is not an attack on our good teachers. We love and appreciate and support our good teachers. In fact, many good teachers support this bill because they want to teach academics free from the equity standards that are being used to defend this material in our school classrooms and libraries. This bill holds school boards, administration, and rogue teachers, the very rare teacher who would actually defend teaching sexually explicit, pornographic, and other inappropriate materials to students without parent permission. These are our innocent minor children, and they should not be exposed to obscene materials in the classroom or school libraries. I do not authorize the school that I pay taxes for my children to attend to show my children materials on sexual acts, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, or anything of that sort without my written permission. I am, and their father are the legal authority of our children, not the schools. It is happening beginning in kindergarten. We have the evidence. The agenda to normalize the sexualization of our impressionable, innocent minor children is coming from the top down in the education system. We've uncovered this. Now we are here to end it with common sense legislation. Protect our good teachers who love academics and education. Protect our innocent children from sexually explicit pornographic material. Please pass this legislation, as the schools have no right to show and discuss these materials without parent authorization. As Pam said, we searched in 50 counties in Iowa in over 70 school districts and found obscene, sexually explicit books in them. I'd also like to address the ISEA person. I am one of the 3 parent objectors in the Waukee School Community District, and Waukee did not remove the oral sex book that Senator Chapman showed you. Initially, they removed it and then they put it back on the shelf. It's still there right now. These images, as mentioned by Catherine, are blocked on Google, Facebook, Amazon because they're adult sex. Why is it appropriate for minor children in school to have access to this? This is common sense. If we do not protect our children in our communities, we have failed. And for the record, the American Library Association cannot be used as a recommendation or trusted source for recommending books, because they are on the list for the top offenders of sexually exploiting children. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Ann Cotard. The floor is yours, Ann.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak this morning. I'm an educator in Iowa City, and I'm also a teacher librarian. I'm also a parent of 2 sons, one 13, one 17, and I strongly oppose this bill. I believe that we already have a process in place. The school district has both a selection and reconsideration policy, and we should follow the processes we already have in place. And we should also trust our professionals to make well-informed decisions on selection. Each book in the library is painstakingly chosen to be there. And as a teacher librarian, I feel I've gone through rigorous training. I have a master's degree. I have 2 bachelor's degrees. If we uphold the professional standards for our teacher librarians, we can trust that they're making decisions that are well-informed. I work with my administrator. I work with teachers. I work with parents to make the best decisions possible for our students. I believe this bill is a step towards censorship in our state, and I believe it's unconstitutional and violates intellectual freedom. Let's use the good selection policy and reconsideration policies we already have. Thank you.
Chad Brubaker, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Senator Zaun. I'm Chad Brubaker. I'm a software engineer here in Dallas County in Waukee. I have 2 major issues with this bill. First, it doesn't fix the problems with the existing law. And second, it doesn't actually remove the existing barriers to parents in reviewing these school porn filters. Please interrupt me if you have any questions. I'm going to be very brief here. First of all, this speech is already illegal under the unconstitutionally vague criminalization of annoying speech under Iowa Code 708.7. Specifically, with regards to pornography, Iowa Code 708.7 subsection 1, subsection A, subsection 5, already specifically criminalizes the distribution of pornography. And so I have a question as to why we're creating an entire section when we already have a section that deals with that should probably be edited here. Some historical background on the constitutionality here. Coates v. Cincinnati, 1971, the US Supreme Court banned states from criminalization of annoying speech. And Iowa has been in contempt of this law ever since. This vague ban on criminalization of annoying speech has to go. Both sides, I would request review the Reno v. ACLU ruling. And that deals with internet pornography. US Supreme Court set barriers as to what could be criminalized and what couldn't. I would really ask both sides to reflect on that ruling. There was a Dunn v. Leith settlement signed by the Attorney General that Shane Vanderhart here, who is in attendance, covered if he wants to speak on that more. And Iowa Attorney General Tom Miller, in contempt of the settlement, only repealed the annoying speech sections from administrative omnibus bills, but not all references to annoying speech in Iowa code. I personally was maliciously prosecuted for annoying speech by Polk County Attorney John Sarcone regarding the lending automation patent. This is an attack on interstate commerce. Iowa has several major data centers. Every message that gets paced through the Facebook, Google, the Microsoft Azure data center that is deemed annoying is criminal. This massively criminalizes a lot of speech that should not be criminal. 8 years ago, Carol Tiernan, a parent at a Lincoln High School, was maliciously prosecuted by the Des Moines Public Schools for speaking out until a judge tossed it out as unconstitutional. So conservatives should be worried right now that the state is maliciously prosecuting parents for speaking out against schools under the guise of criminally annoying speech. My second issue is that this bill doesn't remove barriers to parents actually reviewing the school porn filters. And there actually is a simple cure to this. Under Iowa Code 22.3a, there's a prohibition on reviewing software settings. This was an archaic law passed before software was so commonplace in all of our lives. And it was also brought to my attention by former Senator Ed Fallon that there's also some problems with senators not being able to see their spam filter settings. And so certain constituents are being blocked unbeknownst to senators, and senators should have the power to review those spam filter settings so their constituents aren't being blocked. And I look forward to cooperation in strengthening the First Amendment and reducing the public records law barriers to reviewing these public porn filters so that students or parents can engage their school boards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got, looks like 5 more people want to speak. Just ask you to try to contain your remarks. We're coming up on an hour. But Chris Esperson, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning, really appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm a consistent voter. I'm a parent of 3 children in public schools, and I'm a proud Iowa public school graduate. I love our children. We all want what's best for them, right? Everybody on this call wants what's best for them. So let's do that by supporting our teachers and supporting our librarians. In addition to being a child or a parent that cherishes her children, I'm also a sexual assault survivor. And I read one of the books that you are referring to in its entirety. For me, for my experiences, it was healing, and it was necessary for our adolescents to be able to have the support provided by books such as All Boys Aren't Blued. I would and I will share this book with my children as adolescents and young adults. The books I read 20 years ago in public school had the same content. And for those that remember V.C. Andrews, glorified incest. But they did not have the same intent of this book. Maybe the difference is that it was written by white heterosexual writers. Our teachers and our librarians know what they're doing. They are professionals, and this bill is harmful for the entire state. As far as the excerpt from books that have been read, that is all that they are. They are one expert, and they do not diminish the value of these books and what we can learn from them. Keenan Crowe demonstrated this with the Bible excerpt he read. Regarding the research cited earlier, it should not be applied to these books. They are not pornography. I work in research. The application to these books made was highly inappropriate. Bills like this are going to harm our children and it will harm our state socially and economically. Please do not move Senate File 2198 forward. Thank you.
Michelle Cruz, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Michelle Cruzy. I am a teacher librarian in Cedar Rapids. I'm a parent of 2 teenage sons, and I'm the 2022 president of the Iowa Association of School Librarians, which is part of the Iowa Library Association. I am speaking out against Senate File 2198. Iowa teachers and teacher librarians are not providing pornographic and obscene books to Iowa students, and we feel that this bill is an overreach by Iowa legislators. Iowa school libraries already have in place board-approved selection and reconsideration policies that are required as part of Iowa Code 280.12. Selection policies help us provide books that are diverse representations of our students by allowing us to select books that are like windows and mirrors for our students to see others and to see ourselves. That is perfectly represented in the last statement by Chris that she just made. Reconsideration policies offer parents a voice in the process when they feel like there is a book that has been selected that they do not agree with. We are asking legislators not to move Senate File 2198 out of committee. Thank you for your time today.
Diana Years, you have the floor.
Thank you. I am Diana Gears, and I am a 30-year educator in the state of Iowa, and I am speaking in opposition to Senate File 2198. I am also a board member of Iowa Association of School Librarians. One of the reasons I'm opposed is there's already a law that Michelle mentioned, 280.12, and it's already requiring that schools have these policies in place. There's also a law requiring that there's a certified librarian for each school district. Many have one in each building. And the years that go into the training, the master's degree that's provided or that's required goes into a lot of foundational learning about what it is that we're supposed to be providing for all students and how to make sure that we are providing appropriate materials. With the definition of pornography that's already also in law, that is a redundant part of this Senate File 2198. And again, the definition, it looks at the entire book rather than a simple excerpt from a book, and looks at the intention of the book and the overall literary value. And all of that is already in place. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person up is Denise Perez. You have the floor.
Thank you. I am Denise Perez. I'm a parent at DCG, and I'm strongly against this bill. As a first-generation American from whose parents are from Cuba, and I grew up in poverty, moving to Iowa 20 years ago was a dream come true. That was like the best thing that could have happened to me. And I'm looking at the bills that we're passing today, and all I'm seeing is censorship. All I'm seeing is ignorance, because we are denying that children go through puberty, that children masturbate. I don't know if anybody in that room remembers being 12, 13 years old. You know, these are not logical reasons to be using to ban a book, because it's natural, it's healthy. Sexual psychiatry will tell you that masturbation and going through that process is a good and natural way for children to grow up. So all we're doing is stifling children's ability to develop their own sexuality. You're not helping your kid any by keeping them from it, first of all. Second of all, to the young lady who had that horrible experience at Johnston School, I feel for you. I've listened to quite a few Johnston School students of color, and I know the pain they're going through. As a woman, I know what it feels like to have a man do something like that. I think a lot of women in that room would agree. This is not uncommon. That is a societal that is a societal issue that we need to address. It does not happen because you ban books. So I am strongly against this. I strongly oppose it. You're regressing Iowa, which will not make young people want to move here, will not want to make young people teach here, will not make young people want to have families here. This is not the Iowa that I called home 20 years ago. Thank you.
Okay, we are over an hour. I'm going to let the last speaker be Mecca Pilcher. And I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. Hayek, because you've waited the longest. We had 2 more people that would just sign on. And I want to leave time for our senators to speak as well. So Maka, I apologize.
No, that's okay. It's a strange name. So my name is Maka Pilcher Hayek. I'm an Iowa City Community School District board member. I'm also a former educator. I was an English teacher and I'm an attorney. I feel like Ms. Perez, thank you for what you said. I agree. I feel like we are in the Footloose movie right now. And Senator Chapman, and I don't mean that as a joke, I mean that as a very sad state for Iowa. Senator Chapman, you dismiss the references people have made to your reference to teachers as being sinister, and you're trying to qualify that as being very specific. What you did, and some of the people in this meeting may not be aware of it, what you did was undermine public education. It was a very big and significant decision you made to make that statement. 500,000 Iowan children go to public schools. That is the last thing we need from one of our leaders, to say something that undermines our professionals. I support people that have expertise in this area. They have much more expertise than I do. Even though I was an English teacher, I haven't been one for several years. Even though I have an English degree, even though I'm a lawyer, none of that makes me as qualified as a school librarian. These people have excellent educations, and we need to show them respect. We also need to respect the existing policies that already serve the purpose that I think you are pretending to serve by this proposed legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move over to senators' comments. I am going to allow our president to have a word if you'd like, and then we're going to go with Senator Petersen. And
right. Very briefly, thank you all for speaking. I think the disagreement we see is exactly why we need this bill. Because right now it's the schools who are choosing the curriculum and then choosing whether they stay or not. Iowa Code 728.6 allows one person, and that person is not parents. Parents are cut totally out of this equation. Parents have no other redress. And so that's why this bill is necessary. What I heard that really kind of bothers me is that as a parent, set aside the legislator title, set aside the president title. First and foremost, I am a father. And to hear that I am simply to trust the experts, trust the teachers to decide what my children are going to read and see in school cuts me completely out of the equation. And I'm not okay with that. I trust parents. We're going to empower parents. We're going to empower students to file this complaint and go through a process to have a jury or a judge make the determination whether or not it's obscene or not, and hold people accountable. So thank you all for speaking. Some of the things we heard, I can tell you, it makes me want to cry. It makes me want to cry to hear kids being subjected to this in our public schools. This should be the safest place for them to learn, and this is not okay. And I'll just leave the rest of my comments for the floor. I think that's most appropriate.
Thank you. Senator Petersen, closing comments.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you to everyone who came to testify today, both here in the room and online. I know these conversations are difficult. I am so incredibly sorry for what you endured in your classroom. And while I don't know the situation of the case, that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable, and I'm not exactly sure what transpired. My kids go to Johnston. I went to Johnston. Growing up, I brought home a book from the Johnston Library that I had my mom read to me. And as my mom read the book, she became a little infuriated over what the content was in the book. And it was a girl can be a nurse and a boy can be a doctor. A boy can be a boss. A girl can be a secretary. And my mom thought that book was sexist. And she notified the school, and we went through the process, and it worked. I know some of the content, people have concerns about what is in the book. I trust our librarians and our educators to make decisions on content that our kids have access to. Parents still always have a role in public school districts to be a part of the process. And I will tell you from my experience at Johnston, there were books that actually helped people realize that they were being sexually abused at home, and that it wasn't okay from reading and learning at school. We have a lot of legislation before our body that has not moved forward that would do a better job of protecting our kids from child sex abuse. The Civil Statute of Limitations bill has not moved forward. We have tried for years to get that passed. I've not seen Mr. Hurley and his organization come out to help us pass a strong Civil Statute of Limitations bill. We have some of the worst child sex abuse laws in the country. We should be fixing those. We don't do enough training for our children on grooming. You know, most predators aren't lurking in a back room. Predators, and we agree on some things here. We need to do a better job of training our kids about their bodies so that they can protect themselves. And I just want to say thank you to the librarians and the educators out there that are keeping our schools running. I am sorry that this narrative continues to be forced out of this chamber. We should be doing all we can to uplift our kids and our schools. And thank you for the time today.
Senator
Schultz. Oh, there's a whole lot of thoughts, and this is a very powerful subcommittee. I'd like to tell the public the one time when we started Zoom meetings, almost in the first month, somebody got on the Zoom, and it was Senator Amy Sinclair's Education Subcommittee, and it was a flasher. Immediately upon that happening, the system was shut down. The two young high school ladies who were the pages operating the equipment were protected from further exposure to that. We changed procedures to make sure that wouldn't happen, and that juveniles were not exposed to the cultural corruption that exists in our country. I wish the system here that we're talking about having a process could operate that quickly to protect juveniles from gratuitous images. I'd like to point out that the Bible was brought up actually to defend this. The Bible, I believe, should actually be in schools if the school chooses to. It is a book for adults intended to be taught to their children by parents. It is not something that public education puts into place, and I would invite anybody to show me the illustrations that God inspired to do that. That's a history account. Absolutely ludicrous connection to this. I'd like to bring up a subject that has been touched on by the parents, that the parents are supposed to have a part in this process, but it looks to me like the process is locking them out and saying that we know better. We will impose on your children the books that we want because we're more highly educated. I don't know that they're more highly educated. I do know that the parents have the last, final, most serious say, and they're being denied that. That's the part that bothers me the most, because if this process would work, parents would say, no, I don't want this to happen. The public servants, the people paid to provide the education, would say, all right, it's your children, your tax dollars, we will pull this back. But there seems to be an agenda being driven here. I'd like to say, I'm sorry you experienced that. The reason you experienced that is because gratuitous behavior like this is being normalized by books such as this. And if you're going to protect a young lady such as this, you need to clean up the normalization and the public exposure of this. I don't understand where the feminists went. The feminists used to do everything they could to remove any potential reference to sexualization so that we had a public atmosphere that treated men and women as close to similar as possible. The feminists are not here on this, which tells me that this is a larger progressive ideological movement.
White feminists.
Oh, time out. So I'll finish my comments.
Mute everybody.
I'd like to point, I have always believed, and I've got to get to state government, they're in caucus right now. I have always believed that progressive ideology is a toxic, cancerous ideology that makes cultures decline. And the fact that now it has moved into the American Library Association is proof of that. The left destroys every institution that it moves into and takes over. And we're seeing that now. And now we have young women being victimized. We have parents being pushed into a corner, not liking the product and being told to take it. We have the Teachers Association, the Teachers Union not wanting to take a position, saying that it's an individual decision instead of looking at the picture, saying that, yeah, that's probably going too far. This is approaching grooming, and I'll let other people talk about that. I want to talk about the parents who are trying to fight and are being told to sit down and shut up. I can't stand for that part because they're paying the bills, they're providing the children, and they're the final say. That's good enough for me.
Well, I want to tell everybody thank you that's here online, everyone that testified both online as well as in person. It just makes me sick what you had to experience. And I will commend you. And Mom, good job. It takes a lot of courage to do what you did today. You know, I want to be very clear here. As someone that is married to a former Des Moines public school teacher, I can assure you 99% of the teachers in the state of Iowa are great teachers. We have the best teachers in the United States in Iowa. This is not about the teachers. This is about the parents is what this is about. I just had a senator come to me from rural Iowa, one of our colleagues said, and he said, it's now in our school district. You know, it used to always be this is an urban problem. Well, it's not an urban problem. It's spreading throughout the state. I know that someone said the process works. Well, tell the parents here that the process works. The process doesn't work. And that's why we're having this discussion today. You know, it's really disturbing when you want to go in and what's testimony in regards to they want to blow up this and went into Office Max and they said that they can't reprint it or it's flagged by Google or Facebook. I can tell you when I get a lot of emails, as all of us do here, in regards to this particular subject, and I can't even share because it potentially could be someone that's under the age of 18, this pornographic images that are being shown and taught in our schools. That's very disturbing. I just give them a link to the Iowa Standard. You go there, you can see what it looks like. The testimony that we've had here, some, you know, I certainly appreciate everybody doing this here. But you know what I didn't hear a lot of? I didn't hear a lot about parents. I heard about the system, I heard about the approval, I've heard about administrators, but I didn't hear enough about the parents. When it was brought to our attention up in Johnston, and I did attend a couple meetings up there, I said, where did common sense go? Where did common sense go? We need to fight for our kids. We need to protect our kids. That's what moms and dads do. You know, I gave a speech at the Des Moines Partnership, and it was brought up about this. And I said, there's probably 200 or 300 people that I said, just one person stand up and tell me if this is, you think, the best interest of our kids. This is being taught images of an adult having sex with a child, with a cousin in a stay overnight that is sexually assaulting his younger cousin. This is a brother sexually offending his sister. These are the images that are being taught. And again, where did the common sense go? Not one person would stand up. I personally would rather, as someone that's in small business, rather see our teachers spend a little bit more time on science and math and reading and writing, so when these kids get out of school, they have the tools to flourish. We had another parent that testified, says, you know, I'm teaching my son or daughter these books. Well, that's your decision to make. You're the parent. What we're fighting for is having the parents decide what's best for them. I can tell you that this is about parents. I think we learned a lesson in Virginia. Parents stood up and said they've had enough. We've had a lot of discussions down here about curriculum and allowing parents to have at least review curriculums being taught to their kids. Well, what happened? What changed? Well, it's called COVID. And parents started paying attention because they were at home and they were on their computer and seeing what's going on in their classrooms. I know for sure it's testimony to say that this material is not in our public schools is a lie. And it's our job to try to fix these problems. I do know that there's an amendment that's being worked on in regards to some of the comments the county attorney mentioned. I am going to sign this and move it forward. And I appreciate everybody being here, and I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.